Welcome back to No Mo Data Centers. My name is Millie Ryan. I spoke yesterday with Berta Carpenter and Patricia Schuba from the Franklin County Coalition. I see a lot of conversation on social media about the meeting and people asking what occurred. So let's hear from somebody who was in attendance. We'll go to Berta first.
This Tuesday on April 14th, there was a full house at the commissioners' meeting. There were a few chairs empty, but not many. And I think 15 to 20 people actually spoke. A lot of them talked about the idea that data centers are a big issue and shouldn't be the decision of just 3 people. And so a lot were floating the idea of putting it to a public vote. So that was a lot of what was shared. Also, some discussion about the lack of connectivity that we have with the commissioners, their lack of response to emails or phone calls. So all of that was raised. So it was a good meeting in that it was a chance for people to discuss their displeasure with how the commissioner is reacting to the people's concerns. And I think it was a good time to show the commissioners that a lot of people are in opposition to the data centers, because these meetings normally probably have a handful of people in them, and they had basically a full house with most of the people saying the same thing. You're not available to us. You're responsible for us because you were elected or appointed to these positions to represent us. They heard. Now, whether they will react to what they heard, but they got the message that we were not pleased with how they were kind of poo-pooing us, like you're just one person being loud. Hopefully, we will see more response from them going forward.
Yeah, because they were saying they haven't seen significant opposition to the data centers.
That's correct. They keep saying that most people are in favor of it. So, I mean, define most people,
Yeah, it's not what I'm seeing on social media, and just wonder where they're getting that from.
It's the dream in their heads, so. The next step will be the Planning and Zoning Commissioners meeting, which will be this coming Tuesday, the 21st of April. We'll be at the Union High School in the gym. The meeting starts at 7. The doors will open at 6:30. But we're asking people to start showing up possibly as early as 5:30, hoping to fill the parking lot with cars so that when the commissioners do show up, they maybe have to drive around the building and park further away because all the spots will be taken. We're also hoping to have people kind of lining the entrance to the school along the drive where it's safe to be welcoming to the I don't know that they'll see it as a welcome, but the people with signs standing there as they arrive. We're hoping to totally fill the bleachers this time because we're aiming at 4,000 eyes to be looking at the planning and zoning commissioners as they discuss what they want to do about the data center regulations and the rezoning request. So if we can get 2,000 people there, I would say it will be very difficult for the commissioners to say they might say it, but to say it and have anybody believe them that they haven't seen any opposition. What we're saying is to people, your presence is power. So we're not asking them to speak. We're just asking them to be there as we are showing the solidarity or the unity amongst the people in the county, and that we're invested in this issue so that we're coming to a meeting where we don't even get to speak, but we're coming. That to me says we have activated people.
Yeah.
And I was just speaking to Crystal in the planning and zoning office, and she said, yeah, I'm sure this one won't be an all-nighter, but she said it could be long because the planning and zoning people have a lot to discuss about what they want to do. So hopefully they're being diligent and taking their time. And I think the best outcome would be is if they start their discussions and realize that they can't come to a complete agreement on all that they want, and they table it again, to give them more time to work through all of the issues that, there are still a lot of, what they want in those regulations. Right now there's regulations with 3 different setbacks, 150 feet, 400 and 1,000, and it's really confusing. It will be confusing to anybody if they can't be more clear about something as simple as that in the regulation. So all of these are things that they really need to lock down before they pass them on to the commissioners. We're hoping they will be really diligent about what they're doing and what makes sense and what is right for the county. Once they make their recommendation, it goes to the commissioners, and then the commissioners just take their recommendation. They don't have to live with it. So once they've made a recommendation, it's off their plate and it goes to the commissioners, and then it's all up to them. So we're really hoping that planning and zoning takes a little more time. Ideally, we could table it until after August, after a primary. There are lots of things that could be good outcomes. Right now, I think the best outcome is if planning and zoning tables it at least for another month. But everything since January has just been a rush. It's like, this is a big deal. And maybe they were working on these regulations back in October of last year, but that's still a very short time for something as critical as this. I've heard the story of there was a planning and zoning issue about using shipping containers for storage on businesses' property. And it took them a year to write the regulations that got approved for that, just the use of shipping containers. And this is something much, much more significant. That was really an aesthetic. How does it look to have shipping containers on these businesses' lots? This is way more than an aesthetic. This could be health issues, water issues, power issues. The fact that they're looking at it just from the money that's being promised, not guaranteed, and not all of the other outcomes that can happen from it. And so we're just hoping that time is on our side, that we can wake people up to, what is ahead. And concerns are that right now, a lot of parts that are needed for data centers are caught up in a supply chain. And so a lot of that are being built, they're being built, but they can't get all of the equipment in it because the supply chain is not moving that along fast enough. So we certainly don't want them to say yes, have them start scraping the land and then not get what they need. And then you just have this dry dirt blowing all over the place. We just want it to be what's best for the people around these areas and not just a rush so that the county can potentially get millions of dollars. And the interesting thing was on Tuesday, when Elliot Davis was talking to David Schatz, he said it could be up to $200 million a year. And Elliot said something, he said, well, for multiples. Well, that to me sounds like he's talking about 4 data centers, not 2. So, we know they're wanting the zoning and the regulation so they can just keep bringing in more and more. So that's what we have to get people to realize, that it's not Crooked Creek and Diamond Farms. It could be any farm. And Sullivan in New Haven. It could be anywhere as soon as all this planning and zoning stuff gets approved. It's just the floodgates open. We do know that at the planning and zoning meeting on Tuesday, there is a part in the agenda for communication and visitor comments, but that is not related to data center. And if someone tried to use that time to discuss data centers, they would be shut down. That was not what this is for, because the public hearing for planning and zoning is complete. What Crystal said is, you know, that you get to do it all over again when it gets to the commissioners. So there'll be, chance for another long meeting then. So this time we're just showing up and saying, we're here. Look at us when you're thinking about what you're deciding. And so that's our hope for a big crowd on Tuesday, next Tuesday, a little bit of a protest beforehand, and hopefully not an unruly crowd, but maybe a little bit of an animated crowd, just so that they're not just sitting there, they can be voicing displeasure with thumbs up, thumbs down without disturbing the discussion, but they can actually be sharing their emotion in ways that doesn't disrupt the meeting. So that's what we would hope for. But before they make their decision, they have to have a public hearing. Okay. So they'll have to schedule that. And Patricia will talk more about that.
Now we'll hear from Patricia Schuba regarding where we go from here and details for the meeting upcoming on April the 21st in Union. Patricia.
Yes. Okay. So next Tuesday, April 21st at 7 o'clock, the Planning and Zoning Committee will have another meeting that will include potentially a discussion about the zoning code changes and the two proposed sites in Franklin County. Currently, it's on the old business agenda, but we're pretty certain they will take up the zoning amendments and have a discussion about that. Our hope is that they will either table it or discuss recommending a moratorium hearing to the county commission, because either way that they would vote, if they vote to pass it on to the commission in the form of we recommend or we don't recommend, it goes to the county commission and they will immediately pick up the issue, cite a hearing, and that could take as little as 14 days to do. And then we're back in a hearing with the county commission, which we're pretty certain are committed to passing the zoning regulations and allowing these data centers into the county with very little oversight. And by very little oversight, I mean that they're doing a permitted use. And we talked about this before in a previous podcast, but what that means is the zoning regulations that they're discussing Tuesday night, if they're passed, those are the only regulations over a business that wants to apply to put a data center in Franklin County. So if the science evolves, if we find out they're using too much water or that they're actually polluting the neighborhood or having excessive noise, it's difficult to change their permit because they've been issued a regular permit, not a conditional use permit. So way back when we had the first hearings about these zoning regulations, we demanded if they looked at anything, it would be a conditional use permit. So if they vote on these regulations the way they look currently, their last iteration of the zoning recommendations or amendments, this would not be good for Franklin County. And it would go immediately to the commission, which we have every indication they would pass it in that form. And then citizens would never have input into a data center setting up shop next to their house, next to their church, next to their kids' school, because it would be a permitted use. So our goal that evening is to convince the P&Z commissioners to slow it down, however they can do that, or put it on old business and leave it there. So they could literally leave this case on old business for over a year. One of the cases that's on the agenda for Tuesday night has been sitting there for a year. So that's a possibility. That's a way for our appointed officials for our areas of the county to assert themselves and say, we're not certain that the public wants this, and we see a lot of issues with it. And we don't want to decide yes or no. We want to decide we don't want these regulations. We had actually recommended to the county commission in person that they hold public forums. Why are we not doing that? The commission says they're not hearing from people. Well, they can see the media coverage. They actually listen to streaming versions of the hearings where they saw the number of people showing up. That meeting in January had at least 500 to 800 people there. So they knew there were a lot of folks in the county concerned about this. And if you have 500, 800 people, that means there are thousands and thousands of people. It's a snapshot of who can show up, who's not working, who has the time and the money to be there. They know those are large numbers. And the last hearing in front of P&Z, there were 1,000 people there. So they know this is an issue they should be addressing. And I remember the days in Franklin County when commissioners actually went out into the public and set up meetings, and they listened to people and they answered their questions and they explained their perspectives. It was probably difficult for them to do because the public has a lot of opinions and they want answers. But that would be the logical thing for the commission to be doing right now while the P&Z puts this on hold. It's true that their two options are to say yes or no, but really they carry no weight other than the weight of a reflection of what the public thinks. Under the current government we have in Franklin County, those three elected people decide everything for the roughly 107,000 of us, which is a little frightening if they're not listening to you. So the power that the P&Z has is to not give them the regulations to vote on. And that's what we're hoping they're hearing from us. I know we've had conversations with a few of the P&Z commissioners, but we believe they're being told that they should not listen to the public, they should not attend meetings, they should not be reading the media coverage of this. And I'm not certain exactly where they're getting that information from, but it's flowing down from the county government to them. And they really should think about their role on P&Z is to represent the people in their district, and they should be seeking that input and not to put barriers between citizens and their representative government. So we're hoping that they'll slow the process down, that they won't pass this on to the county commission, and that we will get some form of input into this decision. And that could be in the form of public forums where they listen to us. But I also think it's valid to think about putting it to a public vote. And we asked that question face to face with the three commissioners, and they claimed that we could not do it under statute. But that's not what everybody thinks. And we're talking attorneys, not just the public. And most people can read the statute and understand it, and lawyers know how to interpret it within the body of litigation that's happened before. And we believe it's an important enough decision that the public should have input. And that would put the vote out to maybe August or maybe November. And that would give the chance for the county to do listening posts, to educate, to bring in experts on the topic. And we don't feel like just because you went to a data center and had a meeting with the mayor of that town that you're an expert and have enough information about making this decision. We'd really like to see true expert input on data centers. And I personally believe if they had that, they would never decide to open our county to this. It breaks my heart to see agricultural land and forested areas stripped and opened up to this kind of development. There are plenty of other things we could be doing in Franklin County to generate tax dollars. We don't need data centers and the risks that they bring to our communities. So that's what's happening next Tuesday. We hope everybody can attend. We're hoping for a larger turnout than the last P&Z commission meeting, so maybe 2,000 or more people there. I think more people are educated and engaged on the issue, so I suspect they will be there. And we're urging people to get to the parking lot early, maybe as early as 5:30, 6 o'clock. The meeting starts at 7, the doors open at 6:30. We will have things that people can do and enjoy before going in, and then we'll have a way, even though you can't speak, that you can make your voice heard that night. And we'll leave it at that. Show up in your red, and we'll be able to send a loud message to the P&Z commissioners that we want them to represent us, not big tech and not big data, not money from outside of our county and state. And certainly we expect our elected officials to represent us, and that evening and any other time. So we are really urging people to get engaged with their government and expect more from them. And this is one of the steps along the road of getting that. Tuesday night, show up, be part of a group of people that are willing to stand up as a community for their neighbors and get something better for all of us. I suspect Tuesday night they're going to vote. A majority will vote it through as a recommend, unfortunately. Yeah. And I'm pretty certain, unless we could somehow disqualify Schatz from voting, the commission will vote it through. But they first have to go through a public hearing. So again, we're looking at maybe another month before we would know for sure what they're doing. And then we have to fight it. That's the next step.
So their biggest reason for wanting to do this is because they think it's generating income for the county and the community.
And if you look at the documentation that one of the companies provided, the Diamond Farm project, they're taking into account additional taxes that we would all pay, not just what the developer would pay. So they're assuming you might have some people working here who are making better salaries for a period of time, and they'd be paying taxes. So I want a clear accounting of who's paying what, and are we giving money away to them? So when Berta and I asked the county commission, are you looking at abatements? They said they could not tell us because that's the next step. They're not making that decision now. They're thinking about that. And if you look around at data centers across the state, they're giving away so much of taxpayer money to these companies to get them to set up shop in their county with no assurance that we'll get anything from it other than higher water bills and higher electricity bills and pollution of all types.
Thank you, Patricia. This conversation shows what civic engagement looks like. Neighbors uniting to protect a place they call home. Whether or not the Franklin County Commissioners listen, the people's voices are growing louder. We want to urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to table or delay decisions. We want to push the county leaders for public forums and expert-led discussion. And we really need a referendum to give residents a direct vote on such a large-scale industrial project. The movement isn't only about opposing data centers. It's about demanding a local government that listens, informs, and acts with accountability towards its citizens. Thank you for listening, and stay informed.